Horror Tale Tells, where darkness has a voice.
A blue sedan crawled along the winding mountain road, headlights cutting through the dense fog that had settled over the Appalachian foothills. Sarah Matthews gripped the steering wheel tightly, her knuckles white with tension. The GPS had lost signal 20 minutes ago, and the road signs had become increasingly sparse. What should have been a 3-hour drive from Pittsburgh to her grandmother's funeral in rural West Virginia had stretched into 5 as night fell. The road ahead forked suddenly, no signs, no markings, just 2 identical paths disappearing into mist and darkness. Sarah hesitated, then veered left, hoping her instincts would prove true. The tires crunched over fallen leaves as autumn's early darkness enveloped the car. 10 minutes later, the engine sputtered. Once, twice, then died completely. Sarah coasted to the roadside, panic rising in her chest. The nearest town was miles away, cell service non-existent. She tried the ignition again. Nothing, just the click of a dead battery echoing in the silent woods. The temperature was dropping rapidly as she rummaged through the glove compartment for a flashlight. A distant light caught her attention. Through the trees, perhaps half a mile away, a warm glow pulsed. A house, shelter, maybe a phone. Sarah grabbed her purse and the flashlight, locked the car, and began walking toward the light. The forest pressed in around her, branches scraping against each other in the light breeze, creating whispers that seemed to follow her movements. The beam of her flashlight illuminated only small patches of ground before her, leaving the rest in impenetrable darkness. After 15 minutes of walking, the trees thinned, revealing a large Victorian house perched on a small hill. Its weathered facade and ornate trim spoke of better days long past. Most windows were dark, but a soft glow emanated from what appeared to be the front parlor. An iron gate hung loosely from one hinge, swinging gently though there was no breeze. Sarah approached the front door, noting the peeling paint and tarnished brass knocker shaped like a woman's face, mouth open in a permanent scream. Her hand trembled as she lifted it and let it fall against the wood. The sound echoed unnaturally, as if the house were hollow inside. No response. She knocked again, harder this time. The door creaked open slightly under the pressure of her knuckles. Sarah hesitated, then called out, announcing her presence. The silence that answered was profound. The foyer beyond was dimly lit by a single oil lamp on a side table. The wallpaper, once elegant, now hung in strips, revealing plaster beneath. A grand staircase curved up to the second floor, its banister covered in a thick layer of dust, except for a single clean handprint. Sarah stepped inside, drawn by the warmth and the promise of a working phone. The door swung shut behind her with a decisive click. When she turned to look, she noticed there was no handle on the inside, just smooth, unbroken wood. The living room contained furniture draped in white sheets, like ghosts frozen in various poses of repose. The fireplace held dying embers, suggesting someone had been here recently. On the mantel sat a collection of photographs in silver frames, all facing away from the room. Sarah approached cautiously, turning one frame to reveal a family portrait from the early 1900s. A stern-faced couple stood behind 3 children, 2 boys and a girl. The faces of the children had been methodically scratched out of the photograph. A noise from upstairs, the unmistakable sound of footsteps crossing a wooden floor, sent a chill down Sarah's spine. She called out again, her voice small in the cavernous house. The footsteps stopped. Against her better judgment, Sarah moved toward the staircase. Each step groaned under her weight as she ascended. The second-floor hallway stretched in both directions, lined with doors. All were closed except one, which stood slightly ajar, a faint light spilling out. Sarah's flashlight flickered once, twice, then died. She tapped it against her palm, but the batteries were drained. The only illumination now came from that partially open door. As she approached, she noticed a trail on the dusty floor. Not footprints, but something had been dragged recently, leaving twin furrows in the thick dust. The marks led to the illuminated room. The door opened to a child's bedroom. A candle burned on the nightstand. The bed was made, the coverlet smoothed perfectly, with a porcelain doll placed precisely in the center. Its glassy eyes followed Sarah as she entered the room. On the wall hung dozens of drawings in crayon. Children playing, children laughing, children screaming. The artwork became progressively more disturbing along the wall, stick figures being torn apart, houses burning, dark shadows looming over tiny beds. A music box on the dresser suddenly sprang to life, its tinkling melody a distorted version of Rock-a-Bye Baby. Sarah jumped at the sound, backing toward the door. The porcelain doll on the bed had moved, its head now turned at an unnatural angle to keep its gaze fixed on her. Sarah fled the room, heart pounding. The hallway had grown darker, the air colder. When she reached the staircase, she froze. Standing at the bottom was a small figure, motionless in the shadows. A child, perhaps 8 years old, dressed in clothing from another era. The figure didn't move, didn't speak. Its face was obscured by darkness. "Hello," Sarah called, her voice breaking. "I'm lost. My car broke down. I need help." The child remained still for a long moment, then slowly raised one arm, pointing down the hallway behind Sarah. When she turned to look, the hallway stretched impossibly long, doors multiplying into infinity. When she looked back, the child was gone. A whisper came from behind her, so close she could feel breath on her neck. "You shouldn't be here. Mother doesn't like visitors." Sarah whirled around. Nobody was there. The lights in the house flickered, then went out completely. In the darkness, Sarah fumbled for the banister, desperate to reach the ground floor and find a way out. Her foot slipped on something wet on the stairs. She steadied herself, her hand coming away sticky. The metallic smell of blood filled her nostrils. When the lights flashed back on momentarily, she saw handprints, small, child-sized handprints trailing up the wall alongside the stairs. They were fresh, glistening red in the brief illumination. Darkness again. Sarah descended as quickly as she dared, counting steps, praying she wouldn't fall. When she reached the bottom, she rushed to the front door, forgetting it had no handle. She pushed, kicked, threw her shoulder against it. It didn't budge. From somewhere deep in the house came the sound of slow, heavy footsteps. Not a child's steps, something larger, dragging something heavy. Sarah ran to the nearest window, but the glass was like ice to the touch. Beyond it was not the front yard she'd crossed earlier, but an endless graveyard, tombstones stretching to the horizon under moonlight. The dragging footsteps grew closer. Sarah dashed to the living room, looking for another exit. The furniture had changed positions, the sheets now arranged in a circle around a small table that hadn't been there before. On it sat a leather-bound book, open to a page filled with names. The last entry was still wet. Sarah Matthews. The temperature plummeted suddenly. Sarah's breath clouded before her. The fireplace roared to life without warning, flames leaping unnaturally high, casting writhing shadows across the walls. In those shadows, Sarah could see figures hanging. No, not hanging, twisting, their bodies suspended from invisible nooses. A child's laughter echoed from the kitchen. Sarah followed the sound, desperate for any human contact. The kitchen was old-fashioned, with a wood-burning stove and a hand pump at the sink. A kettle was boiling on the stove, steam whistling softly. Seated at the table was the girl from the photograph, her face still scratched out, a blank void where features should be. She held a teacup in small, pale hands. "Mother's coming," the girl said, though she had no mouth. "She's so hungry. It's been years since we had a guest for dinner." The walls began to bleed, dark liquid seeping from between the wooden boards. The liquid moved against gravity, flowing upward, forming words. "Get out." Sarah backed away from the faceless child, bumping into something solid. She turned to find herself face to face with a tall mirror she hadn't noticed before. In the reflection, she saw herself, but her eyes were black holes, empty sockets weeping dark tears. Behind her reflection stood the figures of 3 children, their faces twisted in silent screams. As she stared in horror, her reflection's mouth stretched into an impossible grin, wider and wider until it split her face in half. Sarah screamed and shattered the mirror with a nearby chair. Each broken piece reflected a different horror: crawling insects, rotting flesh, eyes watching from darkness. A door appeared in the kitchen wall, one that hadn't existed moments before. It stood ajar, revealing stone steps descending into darkness. The sound of dragging footsteps was now directly overhead, crossing the ceiling. With no other options, Sarah plunged through the door and down the stairs, using her phone's feeble light to guide her way. The steps went down much farther than should have been possible, the air growing dank and fetid. The stairs ended in a dirt-floored cellar. The weak light revealed walls lined with jars containing murky liquid. Floating in each jar was what appeared to be a small organ: hearts, eyes, tongues. On closer inspection, all were child-sized. In the center of the room stood a large, rough-hewn table. Dark stains covered its surface. Various tools hung on the wall: knives, saws, pliers, all rusted with age and use. Scratched into the earthen floor was a large symbol, a pentagram surrounded by writing in a language Sarah didn't recognize. At each point of the star stood a candle made of yellowish-white wax that looked disturbingly like human fat. The candles ignited simultaneously without being touched. From the darkness beyond the table emerged a figure, tall, gaunt, dressed in the rotting remnants of a woman's dress from another century. Her face was concealed by a curtain of long gray hair. In her arms, she cradled something wrapped in stained linen. "My children are hungry," the woman said, her voice like dry leaves rustling. "You've kept us waiting." She lifted her head, parting her hair, to reveal a face that was barely human, skin stretched tight over sharp bones, mouth a lipless gash filled with too many teeth, eyes sunken so deep they appeared as black holes. "But now you're here," the woman continued, "and we can be a family again." She unwrapped the bundle in her arms, revealing not an infant but a collection of human bones, assembled into a crude approximation of a baby. The bone child turned its skull to look at Sarah. Sarah backed away until she hit the wall. Her fingers touched one of the hanging tools, a heavy iron mallet. She grabbed it and swung it at the nearest jar. Glass shattered, releasing a foul odor. The woman screamed, an inhuman sound that shook dust from the ceiling. The bone child in her arms began to cry with the voices of many children. Sarah raced back to the stairs, the woman's shrieks following her. As she climbed, the steps began to crumble beneath her feet. The entire house was shaking, the wooden walls groaning as if in pain. She reached the kitchen to find it transformed, the table now an altar, the chairs arranged around it, holding the desiccated remains of previous guests. The faceless girl still sat at her place, teacup raised in a mocking toast. The front door remained impossible to open. Each window showed a different nightmare landscape. The walls continued to bleed, the liquid now forming a pool on the floor that began to rise rapidly. Sarah fought her way to the stairs, the blood-like substance already ankle-deep. She ascended to the second floor, pursued by the sounds of the woman and her bone child. The upstairs hallway had changed again, now a circular passage that seemed to have no end, the same doors repeating over and over. Behind one door came the sound of crying. Behind another, scratching, as if something was trying to claw its way out. A third door bulged outward, wood splintering as something massive pressed against it. Sarah opened a random door and found herself in the bedroom with the porcelain doll. Except now there were dozens of dolls, all identical, all turning their heads in unison to watch her enter. The crayon drawings had expanded, covering every inch of wall space, ceiling, and floor, the same disturbing images multiplied thousands of times. The music box played faster now, its melody distorted beyond recognition. The bed was occupied by a small lump under the covers. As Sarah watched in horror, the lump moved, the covers sliding down to reveal not a child, but a writhing mass of cockroaches in the shape of a human body. The insects scattered as a hand thrust up from the mattress, a woman's hand, blackened and partially decomposed. It grabbed at the air blindly. Sarah slammed the door shut and continued down the hallway. The circular passage finally opened into a new room, a nursery filled with empty cribs. Mobile hung above each one, spinning lazily, though there was no breeze. Instead of stars or animals, each mobile was adorned with tiny bones and teeth. A rocking chair in the corner moved back and forth, its wooden runners creaking rhythmically. The chair was empty, yet the motion was deliberate. The sound of heavy footsteps and dragging had grown louder. Whatever had been pursuing her was close now, just on the other side of the nursery door. The door handle turned slowly. Sarah looked desperately for another exit. There was a small door, like a dumbwaiter, built into the wall. She wrenched it open to find a narrow shaft leading down. Without hesitation, she climbed in, pulling the door closed behind her, just as the nursery door burst open. She slid down the shaft in darkness, the walls scraping her arms and legs. After what seemed an eternity, she tumbled out into a space so black she couldn't see her hand in front of her face. The floor beneath her felt strange, not wood or stone or dirt, but something that yielded slightly under her weight. It felt organic, almost like flesh. A match flared in the darkness, illuminating the woman's face inches from her own. Behind her stood the 3 children from the photograph, their scratched-out faces now restored, revealing empty eye sockets and mouths stitched shut. "Welcome home," the woman whispered, her breath like the air from an open grave. The match went out. Sarah screamed, but no sound emerged. She felt small hands grabbing her wrists, her ankles, her hair. They were pulling her down, down into the floor, that now felt unmistakably like a giant pulsing heart. The house was alive. It had always been alive. As she sank into the warm, wet darkness, Sarah heard the woman's voice one last time. "The house is hungry. The house is always hungry." Hours later, Sarah's blue sedan was discovered by a passing motorist, neatly parked by the side of the road. Her purse and phone were on the seat. The car started perfectly when the police tried it. Of Sarah herself, there was no sign. The dense woods revealed no footprints, no evidence of her passage. The only structure within miles was the foundation of an old Victorian house that had burned to the ground in 1923, taking with it a family of 5, a mother and her 4 children. Local legend claimed that the mother had gone mad after her husband's death, keeping the children prisoner in the house for years. When rescuers finally broke down the door, they found the children's mutilated remains arranged at a dinner table. The mother's body was never recovered. Every few years, someone goes missing along that stretch of road. Searches find nothing. Life in the small nearby town continues. The locals know better than to venture into those woods after dark. And if you drive that road on a foggy night, you might see a light through the trees. A warm, welcoming glow that promises shelter from the cold. Do not follow it. Do not approach the house that isn't there. And if you find yourself at a door with a knocker shaped like a screaming woman's face, turn away. Run. Do not knock. Because if you do, you might hear footsteps coming to answer, and the house is always hungry.
Horror Tale Tales. Make sure to subscribe for more.